The shovel rings like a bell against something that isn't stone. Samuel Carter freezes. Dawn breathes a pale milk blue across his fields, dew flashing like soldered silver along the grass. Wind skims the cornstalks with a papery hiss. He stands ankle-deep in a narrow trench he's been cutting by hand to fix the line that keeps his well from coughing mud into the kitchen sink. One more swing. Steel kisses wood. The sound is wrong, hollow, deliberate, as if the earth itself were holding its breath. Sam scrapes away loam with his gloves, working carefully, patiently, the way you ease a splinter out of a child's palm. Fingers find a curve, planed, old. His knuckles graze brass gone green under the soil. A handle. He digs faster now, breath quick, heart thudding in his ears the same way it did the day the bank's letter came, tight and bright and merciless. The trench's clay sides slough down on his boots. He clears more. Planks, swollen and dark with age. A lid. He swallows. The air changes. Cooler, root wet. The clean iron smell of rain that hasn't arrived. Somewhere near the hedgerow, the blackbird's quiet. The world narrows to the rectangle at his feet and the whistle of his breath. "Grace?" he calls, voice thin. Grace Thompson lives across the gravel road. She's the kind of neighbor who knows when your fence leans because she's already propped it. She appears like a shadow in a sun hat, wiping her hands on flour-dusted jeans. "You hit a pipe?" she asks, trying for light. "Not a pipe. They work without ceremony." Sam's crowbar squeals. Grace's spade flicks away stubborn wedges of earth. When the lid is free, they stare at each other, both suddenly reluctant. The old wood looks like a secret, and secrets have teeth. "Should we call somebody?" Grace asks. "Sheriff," Sam says. His mouth is dry. "Walter Davis." Walter's cruiser rolls up with a low growl, omnipresent dust hopping in its wake. He kills the engine, steps out slow to keep from spooking the moment. Deputy Raymond Holt lingers behind him, hands at the ready, not sure what ready means here. Walter kneels, lays a palm on the lid like a benediction. He smells of coffee and crushed mint gum. The badge on his chest throws a white wink across the trench. "Looks old," he says. "You found this alone?" "Digging." The line broke again. Sam tries to keep his voice level. He can't stop looking at the brass handle, at how the corrosion blooms like lichen. "Let's not open it until we have reason," Walter says gently, like you'd steer a skittish horse. But the earth has its own ideas. A corner plank gives as if exhaling. A faint thread of air unwinds from the seam. Cedar long faded into dust. Cloth rot. A ghost of oil. Not decay. Something preserved. Grace covers her nose. "Lord!" A pickup slows on the road. Phones rise. A murmur gathers like thunder far off. Walter glances at the growing ring of eyes and decides for them. "All right." Carefully. He nods at Raymond. The deputy wedges the flat bar. Sam's hands, without asking him, move to help. His fingers find that greened handle again. Old brass cool as river shade. They heave. Wood groans. Grain splitting in a long tired sigh. The lid lifts an inch, then two. Under the lid, a triangle of cloth shows first. Navy. Folded so sharp the angles still bite after years in the dark. A hint of white star. A soft shimmer of metal. Dull with silt. Not human. Sam knows it before he can say it. Knows it the way you know a summer storm from its first breath. The hair on his arms stirs. "Stop," he says. "Wait." But the lid is already moving. Its own slow inevitability. Light pours in. Dust motes tumble like ash. And there, nested in the hush, the truth waits. Patient, honorable, impossibly intact. Sam's throat closes. That's not a person. The cornfield listens. The road holds its noise like a church. Somewhere a far dog barks and is answered by no one. Walter lowers the lid back down just enough to keep the world from intruding. He looks at Sam, then at Grace, then past them to the strip of sky whitening toward morning. "We're going to do this right," the sheriff says, voice even. "And whatever this is, whoever gets their due." Sam nods. He doesn't trust his voice. The lid rests again, but everything is different now. The farm is different. The day has pivoted, and the trench at his feet, just wide enough to hold a casket, has become a doorway. Introduction with CTA, 1100 words. Samuel Carter has been poor long enough that poverty feels like a set of clothes. Faded, mended, stubbornly clean. He wears it in the way his shoulders tilt after a long day, and in the careful mathematics he does over coffee, counting fence posts by the price of diesel, diesel by the pound of seed, seed by the dollar left in the jar above the stove. His farm is a tired square of Ohio soil, 2 weather-lean barns, a farmhouse with a porch that lists like a man who slept in his truck. He grew up here, left once for a year in a blare of bad choices and loud nights, and came back with a quieter heart and hands that knew the right way to set a stepping stone. His wife, Rebecca Harper, filled this kitchen with cinnamon and radio laughter until the winter the doctor said the word that made the house too large and the bed too small. Now it's just Sam and the fields and the velvet miles of sky that promise and withhold in equal measure. He wakes before the world softens from black to gray. He knows the touch of weather as if it's an animal he's trained, the way the air goes woolly when a storm crouches behind the hill, the click in his bad knuckle that means frost, the thin blue distance that says corn will be less sweet this year. He knows what he owes. He knows the bank manager's tight smile. He knows how long a prayer can feel when you're asking for rain and not drought, a buyer and not a storm. He did not know until this morning that a coffin lay 4 feet under the path he takes between the back stoop and the well house. When he rests now at the kitchen table, palms pressed to the knotty pine, the house smells strongly of damp dirt and old wood, of the trench he cut before light. Grace has gone home to change and to shoo the curious from her ditch. Walter has taped off the yard with a firm calm that does nothing to slow the hum in town. The deputy stands near the trench like a sentry with gentle eyes. The lid waits under a tarp. Every few minutes, Sam glances at the back door like it might open on an answer. There are facts he can hold. It is a coffin. Inside, there is a folded flag. There is metal, a medal maybe, or it could be nothing but the light's trick. And there is something that is not human. Even through the blur of shock, the shape burned a negative against his sight. Long muzzle, ribs like a ship's hull, leather at the throat. He had seen it for only a heartbeat, but awe has its own permanence, like the after image of a strike of lightning. He tries to picture how it came to rest there. His father never mentioned it, and his father talked like a man who wanted to be emptied, who believed in telling a boy where the septic tank ran, and where the rocks were and how the creek will lie to you if you look only at the shine. Maybe the coffin predates them. Maybe someone brought it at night. Maybe the ground took it when the house went up, and has kept the story to itself all these years. You can almost hear Rebecca in the kitchen, the murmur she used when a calf took a wrong turn, the one that made even hard tasks feel possible. We'll figure it out, Sam. Step by step, he breathes. The morning slides toward full day. Cicadas start their dry rattles. Walter's radio crackles and hushes. Sam's phone buzzes and buzzes. Numbers he doesn't recognize. A local reporter. His daughter Jessie Carter checking in from 3 counties over where she moved for work she could count on. He types back, "I'm okay. Strange day. Call you tonight." And because this story will be told because people will lean closer when they hear the first sentence, he dug up a coffin, and inside wasn't human. Let it be told with care. If you're hearing this as a story, in your car, on a couch in a kitchen that smells like coffee, remember that farms are mostly waiting. That mystery often begins as a sound in dirt, that sometimes the past is kind enough to rise only when someone who can honor it is nearby. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you've found meaning in stories like this, stick around. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Drop a comment telling us where you're listening from. Name your town, your road, your corner store. Stories belong to places as much as to people. Out back, the tarp flutters. Clouds shoulder in from the west, their bellies lit like pewter. In the living room, the mantel holds a photograph of Sam and Rebecca in thick wool caps under a winter sun, their cheeks red as apples, their smiles the kind that come from work done together. The house creaks. The floor remembers every step they took here. So does the earth. Sam stands. He feels the tiredness in his thighs, the kind that a good day's work usually spends. Today the tired is braided with a low hum, fear's edge, curiosity's pull. He opens the screen door and lets it clack behind him. The grass under his boot still holds the shape of his toes from earlier. Raymond looks up and nods, respectful, as if the yard itself has become a room where quiet is a rule. "We'll wait for the right people," Walter says. "Veterans Affairs is sending someone. Ernest Parker, I think." He's steady. Sam nods. The name means nothing to him yet, but the folded flag means a great deal. So does the leather he only half saw. So does the idea of a creature that served. He goes to the edge of the tape and looks past it, to the corn, to the horizon line he measures his days by. The wind like distant applause, the smell of river clay warming under the sun. the stubborn hope that keeps him waking up and making coffee and walking out into all this light. These are the things he knows. To them, he adds a new knowledge. Somewhere below his feet, a promise was kept and hidden, and now it wants to be heard. Strange occurrence, 1,100 words. By mid-morning, the yard is a weathered amphitheater. Word is moved as only country word can, faster than the official channels, slower than a secret should. Pickups idle along the ditch with windows down. A boy on a bicycle stands on the pedals for a better look. Grace shuttles coffee in paper cups like a one-woman relief line, shooing gawkers when they lean too close to the tape. "Give the man some space," she says, and there's iron under the kindness. The tarp has settled heavy with dew and rumor. Walter keeps his stance square, quietly making the scene smaller instead of bigger. "This is a place of respect," he says when someone raises a phone too high. Most people listen. Enough don't to make it a job. When Ernest Parker arrives, County Veteran Services, he steps from a sedan with the unhurried gravity of someone who has stood in many rooms where grief is learning its lines. He wears a plain tie, scuffed shoes, and a gaze that lands and stays. He shakes Sam's hand as if they share a friend. "Mr. Carter," he says, "I'm Ernest. We'll take care." They clear the area. The road empties to a murmur. Clouds have muscled in until the light is soft and serious. The smell of rain sits on the tongue like a copper coin. "Let's see what we're dealing with," Ernest says. "Slow, Sheriff." Walter peels the tarp back. The coffin shows itself again. The greened brass, the dark grain, a seam like a healed wound. He nods at Raymond. The deputy eases the bar into the place where wood has yielded before. There's less resistance than anyone wants. The lid lifts on a breath. The world seems to lean in. At first it reads as contrast, white against dark, triangle against curve, but the mind works fast when it wants to name. A folded American flag rests where a chest would be, triangles stacked like mountains, stars bright even under dust. Beside it, a bronze star lies in its dull case, the ribbon's color drained but defiant. And framed by those symbols, guarded by them almost, lies a skeleton long and noble, the clean architecture of a shepherd's body. A leather collar circles the throat, cracked but intact, a pair of dog tags clinking softly as air touches them. The sound is light as a chime. No one speaks. Thunder mutters somewhere east. Grace's hand flies to her mouth. Walter exhales through his nose. Raymond blinks hard. Sam feels absurdly like he should look away, as if this is a private thing and he has barged in on a conversation halfway finished. Ernest leans in just enough. He does not touch the remains. "K9, he says, voice gone softer. "A working dog." The tags catch a seam of light. Ernest squints. "If those are military, we'll read them, but only with gloves." He glances at Walter. "We need photographs. Careful ones. We need to call the base at Chillicothe. Maybe Wright Pat. Someone who knows the old formats." Walter nods toward Raymond, who has already raised a camera that doesn't intrude. Shutter clicks stitch the moment into a careful record. Under the folded flag there is the faint suggestion of cloth. Silk? Satin? The lining has gone the color of dried leaves. The wood inside is smoother, spared the soil's bite. Whoever laid the dog here did it with devotion and with knowledge. The flag's edges are correct. The metal placed not as decoration, but as testimony. A small envelope, brittle and sealed with a smear of wax, sits tucked between the flag and the coffin wall. Ernest notices it last, the way you notice a detail in a painting only after you've stared long enough for it to reveal itself. "There," he says. "We won't open that here." Sam's throat works. "So it's official?" he asks, hating how needy the word sounds. Ernest considers. "It's real," he says. "That's what I can tell you already. Real service, real care, real love." The wind rises and pulls a shiver through the corn. The first big drops of rain slap the dust, leave dark coins that vanish as quickly as they appear. Walter looks at the sky. "We should cover it back up until we can move it properly." Ernest hesitates. "One more thing," he says. He pulls on nitrile gloves that squeak at the wrist. He lowers his hand slow, and lifts the tags by their chain. Not fully, just enough to read. The metal flashes, dims. He mouths the letters, then speaks them to the record. "Rex," he says, "Sergeant Rex, K9. He swallows, reads the rest. "Handler, Robert Hayes. Unit, 2nd Battalion, Bronze Star." He looks up at Sam. "Mr. Carter, there's a line here with an address. This farm. The name breaks something open in the day, a door between past and present swinging free on a hinge that hasn't squeaked in decades. Grace gasps. Hayes. Ethel Hayes used to come to the fall socials with pies so tall they leaned like towers. Robert Hayes. Walter repeats, searching his own shelves of memory. Lived out this way until the 90s, didn't he? Ernest nods once, as if a puzzle he's seen before has just turned in his hands to show its picture. We'll confirm, and then we'll do what should have been done. The rain arrives with a suddenness that feels like permission. It rattles the tarp when they lower the lid again, the sound like applause under a roof. They strap the cover down. The air smells of lightning and cut grass, and the clean mineral hush that follows the sky's decision. Inside the house, Sam stands alone for a breath and presses his forehead to the cool glass of the back door. He lets the rain's roar fill his skull until it rinses the noise of the road away. He sees Rebecca at the sink in an old memory, sleeves rolled, laughing at something he has just said. He hears her voice again. We'll figure it out, step by step. Outside, the tape flutters. The trench darkens to a black ribbon. A story that was buried has started speaking. It will not be shushed. Conflict and discovery. 1,100 words. The storm spends itself by afternoon, leaving a sky wrung clear and a world rinsed. Mud clings to boots and to the day's decisions. Walter posts a deputy at the tape. Ernest makes calls, voice lowered, every sentence layered with care. Sam moves through his house like he's wearing it for the first time. He puts on coffee and forgets to drink it. He counts fence staples in a dish. He stops. He listens to the dryer drum toss a single towel. He wonders how long he's been listening to machines so he doesn't have to hear the inside of his own head. By 3, a plain government sedan crunches up the drive, trailed by a second car with a faint magnet on the door. Veterans Affairs. From the first steps, a woman with a linen dress, and the kind of grief that has been set down, not because it is light, but because it's been carried long enough to learn where to hold it. Grace meets her halfway. The woman's name is Ethel Hayes. She is smaller than Sam expected, which makes the steadiness in her eyes larger. Her hands are the kind of hands that have folded many flags. She walks to the tape as if approaching a pew. Ernest introduces everyone with a quiet thoroughness. When he says the name Robert, something softens and hardens in her face at once. Mrs. Hayes, Ernest says, we think the remains inside belong to Sergeant Rex, K9, your husband's partner. She nods without blinking. I know, she says. I've known in my bones there would be a day like this. Her voice carries the Ohio hills and the one long winter she must have spent somewhere warmer. She looks at Sam. You must be Mr. Carter. Thank you for digging where you did. Sam doesn't know what to do with gratitude for an accident. He nods, uselessly. Ma'am? Ethel's gaze drifts out over Sam's fields, finding the shape of a younger farm under the present one. Robert brought Rex home in his heart when they discharged him, she says. He said the paperwork got mixed, or maybe he mixed it, I never asked. In '95, when he started to go downhill, he'd sit on the back steps and talk to that empty yard like a man waiting on a bus. After he passed, I moved in with my sister. I sold to a distant cousin of yours, Mr. Carter, I think, and then he sold to your daddy. I never came back, but I knew he had done something here, something he thought was right. The law is a creature of lines. The heart draws its own. Ernest walks the boundary between them with an old hand. Mrs. Hayes, he says, if this burial wasn't official, we'll need to make it official. Rex deserves full honors, and so does Robert for keeping faith in his own stubborn way. Walter clears his throat. There's also the matter of Mr. Carter's property being a scene until we finish. Sam bristles, then reins it. He needs this land to be just land again. The harvest window is never generous. Rain gives and takes in the same day here. He can feel the math tightening around his ribs. Ethel turns to him as if hearing the arithmetic. I know what it means when strangers come onto a farm with their rules, she says. It means a day of work you don't get back. But sometimes work looks different than the kind that puts food on the table. Sometimes it looks like standing still so someone else can be carried properly. Sam thinks of Rebecca saying grace over stew, her thanks always including the unnamed hands that grew and picked and trucked what they ate. He nods. Do what you have to, he says. Just do it right. They do. A van arrives with 2 men and a woman in dark suits that don't mind dirt. They bring a gurney and a canvas that fits the length of a life. The lid lifts one last time in Sam's yard. The camera clicks for the record, but mostly the work is done with eyes and hands with a silence that knows how to be strong. Ernest reads the tags again, this time into a small recorder for clarity. He notes the metal. He slips the sealed envelope into a rigid folder. "Don't open that," Ethel says, voice sharp as a twig snap. "Not yet. Not here." Ernest inclines his head. "With your permission, we'll open it at the Veterans Hall. You'll be there." "I will." As they transfer Rex with care, a truck rolls up too fast and too loud. A man climbs down, face already set to combative, the way some people's voices always start in capital letters. He introduces himself as a representative of the county code office. He says things about unauthorized interments and penalties and precedent. Walter's posture changes by an inch. "You can lower your voice," he says, polite as a plumb line. "This is an official removal under my direction in Veterans Affairs. You can read the room and come back with your booklet tomorrow." The man falters. His eyes flick to the wrapped remains, to Ethel, to the deputy, to Sam, who stands taller than he feels. He mutters something about forms and leaves with less gravel spit than he arrived with. The gurney wheels bump over lawn hummocks like a heartbeat smoothing out. The van doors open. Before they close, Ethel steps forward and lays her palm lightly on the canvas, right where a broad head might have rested. "Good boy," she says, a catch in the words and a smile inside them. "You waited." The doors seal. For a second, the yard is a study in stillness. Then the day begins again, differently. Inside the house, Ernest sets the rigid folder on Sam's table and opens it with the careful flourish of a man unsealing a story. The envelope within is brittle, yellowed, the wax cracked like dry riverbed. He slides a thin knife under the flap, preserving as much as he can. He draws out a single sheet of paper, folded twice, and a photograph that still holds the gloss of a studio somewhere hot and dusty. In the picture, a younger Robert Hayes stands in fatigues beside a German shepherd whose eyes look into the lens like a person's. Hayes's hand rests on the dog's shoulder with the casual intimacy of 1,000 miles walked side by side. Ernest reads the letter aloud. It is not long. It says in a soldier's plain words that on a certain day, in a certain valley, Rex alerted early, saved a patrol from an ambush, took shrapnel in his left hindquarter, survived, returned, worked again. It says Hayes promised him a home end to end. It says that when the army said equipment is disposed of, Hayes heard only that a friend would not be treated like one. It says if the law is offended, Hayes will meet it with an apology, but not with regret. The room lets the words settle. Grace wipes her eyes with the heel of her hand. Walter looks at the photo as if it's an old family thing. Ethel stares at her lap and nods once. That motion you make when someone finally says out loud what you've known in your bones for years. Sam clears his throat. What happens now? Ernest folds the letter back into its envelope. "We give a soldier his due," he says, "and we give a good dog a hero's rest." Climax, 1,100 words. They set the date for 2 days hence, fast enough to honor urgency, slow enough to gather the right uniforms and the right words. The Veterans Cemetery an hour away agrees to receive Sergeant Rex beside a low hill where the flags snap like clear thought. A bugler is found. An honor guard volunteers. The news learns the outlines and, for once, mostly keeps to them. The morning of the ceremony, Sam dresses in the old suit he wore to Jesse's graduation, and to Rebecca's service, and to nothing else. It smells faintly of cedar and resolve. He polishes his boots not to a mirror, but to a good effort. He stands on the porch and looks at the fields as if asking their permission to be absent a while. The fields answer the way fields do, by being there when you return. At the hall, rows of chairs face a table draped in blue. On it rests the bronze star, polished to a warm burnish, and the photograph of Hayes and Rex. Beside them, the folded flag from the coffin sits like a thought that has found its right shape. Ethel stands near it, hands folded, a small pin at her collar that belonged to Robert, its enamel nicked at the edges by years. People come, not a crowd exactly, more like a congregation. Men with backs like fence posts, women with faces that have learned how to be both fierce and tender at once. A handful of kids with knees unguarded by understanding. Jessie arrives breathless, eyes wide, hand finding Sam's and squeezing once, hard. "Dad," she says, and everything she doesn't have time to say is in it. The honor guard is precise without being rigid. White gloves, blue cloth, movements that look like the answer to a question you didn't know you were asking. Ernest speaks first. He tells the story in a narrow beam of facts, little flourish, enough to keep the edges from cutting. He reads the letter into the record, voice steady. Then Ethel steps up. She takes the microphone like a woman taking someone's hand. "Robert would have stood here and told you it wasn't about him," she says. "He would have pointed to the dog and said, 'This one saved them. This one smelled it before we saw it. This one ran where men ducked.' He taught me that when you've walked hungry and cold with a partner for long enough, the word owner sounds foolish." So when the army said equipment, he heard insult. He did what he thought was the only decent thing. He brought his friend home. She pauses, breathes, smiles off to the side at something only she can see. "He also made a mess," she adds, and the room laughs softly, relief like a breeze. "So today we are cleaning up after his good heart. Thank you." The chaplain says what chaplains say when they are careful. Words about service and devotion, about the way love can put on a harness and take orders and still be holy. He does not waste anyone's time. He doesn't need to. Outside, the sky is a clear bell. The bugler stands at the far end of the green, horn lifted. The case with Rex rests on the bier, draped with the flag that was found in the dark and brought to light. The honor guard lifts. The air seems to thin around the motion, like the world is making room for it. Taps climbs the morning in notes that feel like they've always existed. The sound bites sharp, then goes soft at the edges, hangs, vanishes into the trees, as if the pines themselves have mouths. A volley of 3 rifle shots cracks and echoes. Birds ripple out of the branches and return because there is nowhere else to go. Sam stands with his hands at his sides. He does not try to catalog his feelings. He lets them be. He thinks of Rebecca's laugh. He thinks of the shovel ringing like a bell. He thinks of promises, the kind you keep even when it makes trouble, the kind that tie a life together at the ends. When the folding of the flag begins, everyone's world narrows to triangles and careful hands. The flag crosses and tucks, a choreography of gratitude. At the end, it is presented to Ethel. The sergeant's voice is low, words worn by repetition but not dulled. On behalf of a grateful nation, Ethel dips her head to receive it. In the space between her hands and the cloth are 30 years, missing and given back. Ernest steps forward with the bronze star. "For conspicuous gallantry," he reads, the old language still good as oak. He lays the medal beside the folded flag in Ethel's hands, not as a weight, but as a balance. They lower Rex into the ground with a gentleness that pulls something tight and then lets it go. Dirt sounds different when it lands on meaning. It's a quieter thud, respect changing even physics for a moment. After, there are hands on shoulders, the murmur that follows ritual when people are reluctant to re-enter the ordinary. Jessie leans into Sam, head on his arm. "You did right," she says. "I just found him. You did right after." He doesn't argue. He has learned to accept certain verdicts from his daughter. Before they leave, Ethel finds Sam by the steps. Up close, her eyes are the gray of weathered barnwood and twice as strong. "Robert would have liked you," she says. Sam clears his throat. "He sounds like he might have been a lot to like and a lot to handle." "That's accurate." She glances at the plot. "If you don't mind, I'd like to bring a little piece of your land here. A jar of soil. He should have it at both ends." Sam blinks. "I'll bring you a bag," he says. "A good one." Resolution and conclusion with CTA, 800 words. In the days that follow, the farm exhales. The tape comes down. The trench is filled. The well line gets fixed with parts Raymond finds through a cousin at cost. Grace shows up with a casserole that tastes like comfort made visible. Men from the hall swing by on Saturday with a post driver and their sleeves rolled, setting a new stretch of fence because work is the way they say we're with you. Jessie returns the following weekend and spends it laughing in the kitchen while scolding him for stalling on replacing the porch step that groans like a haunted violin. The bank calls and, for once, the voice on the other end sounds human. Someone in the branch saw the story and decided rules have elbow room if you look at them sideways. Terms adjust. Deadlines breathe. A little. Enough. A small wooden box arrives in the mail, addressed in a hand that shakes more from age than doubt. Inside, wrapped in tissue that smells faintly of lavender and attic, is a brass nameplate. SGT Rex. Ethel's note is 4 lines. She says the cemetery has a marker, but this belonged in the dark, and then in the light, and now it should spend some years where it can be touched. She asks if Sam will mind keeping it until the museum annex is finished. She writes, "Thank you for being the sort of man a secret waited for." Sam mounts the nameplate on a square of old barnwood and sets it on the mantel beside the photo of him and Rebecca. He keeps the envelope with Robert's letter tucked behind it, as if words can be warmed by proximity. Sometimes at night, When the house clicks as it cools, he looks at that small brass rectangle and feels less alone, as if the farm's long memory has accepted him into its care. When he walks the back path now, he pauses where the shovel rang. He doesn't make a habit of reverence. Work doesn't always leave room for posture, but he nods. He notes the way light lays itself across the grass, how the wind speaks through corn, the way stories kneel in the dirt until someone with the right hands lifts them. Harvest comes. It is not generous, but it is not cruel. That counts. The combine grumbles its old song. Dust scribbles the air. The sun drops hard and gold and then quickly. Dogs in the next field bark and are answered. If Sam sometimes hears an extra footfall at his side, if he feels now and then the press of a head against his leg where there is none, he does not say it aloud. Some companionship is understood. On a quiet evening, with supper dishes drying on a towel and the porch light making a soft circle on the steps, Sam sits and stares at the dark line of trees. He thinks of promises, the ones Rebecca and he kept without saying, the shared weight of a day, the kindness of letting a fight go cold until morning, and the one Robert kept loudly, if secretly, stubborn enough to dig and tuck and lower and believe that love outranks certain rules. He thinks of how the world is loud with breaking, and how sometimes, in a backyard, something is mended instead. If you've walked with us this far, thank you. If this story put a hand on your shoulder today, there are more like it. Ordinary people, unordinary days, the way the ground gives up its mysteries when someone patient listens. Tap to watch the next story when you're ready. It's waiting just to the right. And if you don't want to miss the moment the past knocks softly and the present answers, subscribe now. Tell us where you're from in the comments. Tell us who you'd have dug for in the dark. Around here, we keep two rules. We honor what served, and we show up when it counts. The wind lifts. The porch step groans its old protest, and Sam makes a note to fix it before the first frost. He stands, pats his pockets for the small wrench he carries like a talisman, and smiles into the dark where a good dog might be keeping watch, where a farmer's small plot has become, in its quiet way, a place where the nation did something right. He goes inside. The door snicks shut the way a sentence ends when you've said exactly what you meant.